Hello again. I wanted to make a little video and talk about making assignments, tracking work, and giving feedback in Google Classroom. And before we start, I just want to give a little disclaimer here. I want to say that these are some ideas. I'm not promising you all the answers. I don't want you to feel that this is the only way to do things, or even the best way to do things. This is just our way. So, in Classroom, I'm in my classwork tab and I want to make an assignment. So I'm going to click on the create button and I'm going to choose assignment. When you create an assignment, it means you're making a space for students to submit work to you. Usually in the assignment file, you also have your instructions and all those details, but it's really just a space for Google to capture some files for you and organize them. So let's call this Math April 8th, 2020. You can enter instructions here. You're not going to believe this, but sometimes I find students don't always read the instructions if they're here. So usually I have my instructions just in whatever document I attach. So I'm going to go to Add, I'm going to click Google Drive, and I'm going to grab a document to attach to this. So what I would do if I were creating an assignment is typically I would make the document that I want them to work in, and then I would go and grab it and attach it here. Some files in my drive, Google sorts this by recent first. So if you've just created the file that you want the students to work on, it'll be the first one here. So we're going to imagine that this title document, which I just showed you, is the work I want. So I double click on it and it appears here. This is the most important part, I think, if you're creating an assignment. Here in this option here, by default, it's set to students can view file. That means that students can look at this document, they can make themselves a copy of it, but they don't have access to it. So the advantage to that is if you go back and change anything in this file, students will all see the changes. But it means that they can't create or they can't edit the file or create any of their work inside that file. So most of the time, I use make a copy for each student. And what that'll do is when I create my assignment, it'll make a copy of this file from the start for each student, and I'll show you in a second what that looks like. And that means that they can start working in that document and you immediately have access to that document so you can pop in and give them feedback and help them out. The other option here, students can edit file, means that you and your whole class all have edit access to the file so you can collaboratively work in it. It has some neat applications, but I find that it's usually a little messy with students erasing each other's work and deleting things that they weren't supposed to, and you can pull it all back because it's Google, but it can be a bit of a headache. So make a copy for each student is what I'm going to do most of the time. Here on the right, you have some options about the assignment. By default, obviously, it's going to be in the class that you're looking at. It's going to be posted to all students. You can post assignments that are only posted to some students. Let's say you have a handful of kids and you want to give them more opportunities to practice a certain skill or a certain concept. You can post it just for them. Google has a grading scheme, but it's based on percentages, not on levels. And we're in a time where we're just focusing on feedback. So most of them I change to ungraded. It doesn't matter if you do or not. I just feel like it's a little cleaner. It's not showing a mark there that you haven't put in. Here you can click the due date. As I've said to some of you previously, for this time of Learn at Home, I'm setting all of my due dates for Fridays of the week I'm creating assignments. That doesn't mean that all my students have to submit things by Friday, but once a due date passes, if a student submits something late, Google will send you an email telling you that a student has submitted that work late. So that just means I can keep an eye on the work that I've assigned this week. And if a student goes back to something previously, then it doesn't matter. Google will let me know and I can go take a look at it. So let's say I just pick Friday as my due date. I can organize it under a topic. So these are the topics right now I have in my classroom. This is mathematics. That just helps you go back and find it later. And there is a rubric setting, but I'm not going to go into that now. You can ask me questions if you have them later. If I want this to go live right now, I click assign, but the magic, ladies and gentlemen, is in this little drop down. So this schedule button is a beautiful thing, and I've been using it a lot in this short week. So what I do under this schedule button is I also pick a date, and let's say I want this to pop up Friday at 8:59 a.m. There it is, and I click schedule, and this assignment will be scheduled so that it appears to students Friday at 8. So I've started building what next week will look like for students, and I've got assignments scheduled so they'll show up automatically, and I don't have to make sure I'm up early in the morning to beat the first kid to the computer to make sure everybody has fair access. There is another option in here to just save your draft. I don't use that often, but the option is there. So you make your assignment, you post it, students get working on it, and then you might ask, okay, well now what? So if you look at any assignments you've posted, here's the history that I posted for this week. We're talking about the War of 1812 in grade 7. I'm going to open this and we're going to look at what it looks like when I have an assigned assignment and students have been working on things. So here's the inside of my assignment now that students have been working on it. I've put these boxes everywhere to hide student names. And you'll see at the top that we have 2 tabs that we can look at. Right now I'm looking at the student work tab. This tab shows me the instructions where I could make edits to my assignment if I had to go back and change things later. These students have been working in the doc I've assigned them, and 2 documents assigned to this that I wanted to have them work on. And so here's the student with the 2 documents that they've turned in. It shows me here that of my 23 students, 2 have turned in work. Over here on the left, it shows me specifically which ones, as it does here. There's a sort option where I could sort by name. I find sort by status is the best way to look. And so let's pop into a student's work and look briefly at what they've done and then talk about what feedback looks like. So I'm just going to click on this and that will bring me into the student work. So here we are inside the work that the student has done. My students and I are reading a graphic novel about the War of 1812. And to start it off, I've asked them to identify some actual historical details and some fictional elements in the first chapter. So what the work the student has actually done here is filled in this table. When I give them feedback, you have a few options. I can, if I want, put my cursor right in this document, and I can type right in here. The problem with that is it's hard to differentiate what's the student's work and what's my comments. So what I like to use is a tool called comments. So I'm going to highlight the word Loxleys because my first thought is that should be a capital L because that's their family name. So I'm going to click on this little comment bubble that pops up, add a comment. And it gives me this little box here and I'm going to say Loxleys needs a capital and comment. So now in this student's work, they'll see this comment. They'll have the option to click this resolve button to say they fixed it, or they can click on it and reply like this. And they can say, well, Mr. B, I don't understand why that is, or can you help me fix it, or whatever it may be. There's no check here that makes sure they do something with this information I've given them. And they only see this if they go back and open the document, but it's there for them. So usually I go into the document, I highlight a few things, give them some specific comments. And then over here in private comment, I'm going to give them some general comments. So I'm going to put in the student name. You have done this well. Continue to do that. watch out for those. So I'm going to write those with comments, and I'm going to click post. When I click post, the student will see that feedback. They'll get a notification that I gave them that feedback, and it will be tied to this assignment. When I'm done those two things, I'm going to click this return button at the top, and that's going to return the file and the comment to the student so they have it all. So, comments in the document if you want to say specific things, general comments here in private comments so that you can give them general information or trends that you've noticed in their work. Post this, return it all, Bob's your uncle. You'll see up here where I've blocked out the student names, because I've asked the students to work on 2 files, the student has submitted 2 files. So here's the first one, and here's the second one. If I want to go to the second file, I just click right up here, and it will bring me to that second file. And here in that file, I had some general comprehension questions about the second chapter they had to read, just to make sure they have a general idea about what's happening. You'll notice that my private comments stay the same because they're tied to the assignment, not the file. And in here, I can go make some comments about how they've done in this particular piece of work. So I would look at all the work they've submitted, give them some comments in the document, some general comments, post the general comments, and then click return, and they get it back. Again, just to remind you, whatever private comments you give them without opening the document. So you may want to have a line in there that says, please open the document to see specific corrections. When I'm done with this student, I'm going to use the drop down to go and select my next student whose work I want to look at. There are times when a class set of work is done and you're working through it one at a time, but because you're going to have some students submitted and some not, it's probably a best bet to just click this drop down arrow. So that's some general comments about feedback and how I do it. I want to show you another way to track what students are doing, and I'm going to hop to my classroom tab to do that. So here I am back inside the history assignment that we looked at earlier, and I could go all the way back to my classroom, back to my classwork tab here, and cycle through all the assignments that I've given students and find them all, and then check everywhere to see who's submitted what. But that's a lot of chasing, and I want to save you a little bit of time, so I'm going to show you a quicker way to do it. So I'm going to go back to my stream, and here on the top left of my stream, I have this little. So if I click View All, what it's going to do is it's going to give me a list of everything I've assigned and what I've reviewed. Here's a fraction self-assessment that I posted for my students last week. Of my 23, 10 are still assigned. That means they haven't done a thing on it. Or maybe they've worked on it and haven't submitted the file to me. 9 have submitted it. I've looked at it, given them feedback, and returned it to them. And 4 have turned it in since I went through and gave that feedback, so I didn't get to those 4 yet. Similarly, I have a reading response that I gave last week. 12, so they haven't clicked submit. Maybe they've worked on it, maybe not. 10 I've looked at and returned. 1 is turned in, waiting for my feedback. This way, I can look and see where students have done work and decide, oh, you know what, I'm going to go and take a crack at this math and give feedback to these 11 students who turned this in. Maybe I'm going to history for now until more students have worked on that. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, or there's anything I can assist you with during these strange days of isolations, don't hesitate to reach out.